Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today's webinar is Take Control of Your Information, Integrating and Collecting Your Disparate Data Sources from the Cloud and into TheBrain. My name is Matt Caton. I'm the Director of Customer Solutions here at TheBrain Technologies, and I'm joined today by Patrick Thompson, who will be monitoring our question panel in the GoToMeeting window.
Hi, everyone.
So thanks so much for joining us. We're really excited about today's topic because so often when we're demoing TheBrain, we're really demoing the basics behind creating new thoughts. Thoughts are the building blocks of your brain, and a thought can be a representation of any type of digital information. So we're showing dragging and dropping of individual files into the brain, web links, sometimes emails. And today we're taking a more specialized approach and talking about Web 2.0 integration. So as you may know, Web 2.0 is user-designed content, so user-generated content on the web. And this obviously is referring to Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, OneNote, Evernote. There's a long and still growing list of applications that are out there today that allows people to collaborate in some capacity or even just access their own data, their own files through a web interface. And it's very, very easy to bring all of that content into the brain. And often people say, well, I don't use those other applications, so I don't need to worry about how to get those into the brain. But more and more, even I find in my own daily life, whether I use a particular application or not, someone else does. Maybe it's a client, maybe it's someone in another department or a colleague or friend of mine that has a file that they want to share with me. And what do I get in the email but a link to their Google Drive or their OneDrive or an Evernote link, whatever the case may be. So whether I'm using those applications or not, I am faced with accessing them, and quite often I need to archive that information. I need some way to save it, and rather than creating all these separate accounts and maintaining all these different links, I can bring all of that together right in the brain for easy access, and it's in context with the project that I'm working on or the topic that is being discussed. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, I'd like to share with you before I get started that Patrick will be monitoring the questions panel in the GoToMeeting window. So if you have a question about another feature that I'm not covering today and you want to ask more about that in the QA session after today's demo, we can do that. Or if you'd like me to highlight a specific topic that maybe I glanced over a little bit too quickly, whatever the case may be, feel free to write those questions in the GoToMeeting panel. Patrick will take care of you there or throw the question back to me at the end of the demo today. So here I have a brain open. This is a sample brain that I like to use, and I would really quickly like to give you a rundown of the basics of the brain applications. For those of you that are new users, just a real quick summary of what you need to know, and then we'll jump right into those different data sources from the cloud. So obviously you can see this existing brain is made up of a series of what we call thoughts. And again, thoughts, the building block of the brain. Every time I click on a thought, it brings that thought into the very center of the brain and displays all related information around it. So here I've clicked down through clients, top clients. I'll click on Time Warner. And Time Warner is my current active thought. That's the focus right now of my brain. Everything else on the screen is related to Time Warner in some capacity. So thoughts below the active thought, we refer to those as child thoughts. Those are really subcategories. So here you can see are a couple of ad campaigns, one of which I'll be working on today, a couple of customer documents, some contacts, and other subcategories. Above the active thought, we have its parent thoughts. So in other words, Time Warner was a subcategory of top clients. But notice that I also clicked down through communications or media and entertainment. So I've got many different options as far as how I want to access or how I'm thinking about my information. And that's something that makes the brain really differentiate itself from the typical file and folder type structure. If I were storing this in my files on my Mac or on my PC, I would have potentially gone to the wrong directory. I can only have the Time Warner folder in one location. Sure, I can create shortcuts in other locations or copies. I definitely don't want to copy my work, and a shortcut doesn't show me all the context, all the other categories that Time Warner fits into. And the brain certainly can display that information and those multiple relationships that Time Warner has. And I also have a wonderful feature which is called a jump thought. And a jump thought is where you can break away from any type of hierarchical structure you may be creating. Jump thoughts are something that are typically related to the active thought, but let's pick Vin, for example. He is not a subcategory of Time Warner, so I don't have him linked down below. He doesn't own Time Warner, so I don't have him linked above the Time Warner thought, but he's currently working as the graphic artist for this client, for this account, and I quite often need to look up his contact information or jot down a few notes on his thought about a conversation or some ideas I have before our next presentation. So therefore, I want him linked as a jump thought, so while I'm on Time Warner and I get this great idea about some upcoming graphics, I can click on Vin's thought, go directly to his thought, see what other projects I have him linked to, and even open up his notes down below. So I'll click to activate the tool tabs down below, and you can see here are all of my notes for Vin, and I can leave a few additional notes about an upcoming presentation. So let's go ahead now and talk about how we can add content into the brain as well. Notice that many of my thoughts have Word documents associated with them, or web pages, Excel spreadsheets. Any type of digital information can be associated with a thought. And this is important to point out as we move towards all of these Web.0 features. I'm going to click down to, here I'll click first on the world. The world is the ad campaign that we are going to be working on today. Here's an existing ad campaign, Reach Out. And notice that all of my project plans, my different important documentations for this project, media research and web links are all linked as a child thought below Reach Out. So whenever I'm working on this account, I can quickly and easily access the PowerPoint presentations for my client or all of the sort of lifecycle documents for this particular client. We're going to do the same now for the world. So first, I'm going to create an area for my research and an area for my, what I like to call lifecycle documents. And I do that by clicking and dragging off of the child gate. So this is one way to create a new child thought within the brain. I can click and drag off the child gate, the jump gate, or the parent gate to create a new thought that fits into that category. So my new subcategory beneath the world will be my life cycle. So these are all my life cycle documents. I'm going to be bringing a lot of these into the brain. And I'm also going to click and drag again and create an area for all of my research. So research will be all of my different web links that I'm collecting for this particular client or graphics that I want to share with them. And let's go ahead and bring some of that content in now. So first I'll start with Lifecycle. And let me just show you really quickly how we can bring an existing document from our existing computer right into the brain. We can simply do that with a drag and drop. So here I've got some existing documents, and I can quite easily drag and drop them right into the brain. So I grabbed this May 2016 sales figures for my client. I brought that right into the brain, and as you can see, what that does is it creates a shortcut directly back to that existing version. So that's the default for the brain anytime you do a drag and drop. It's going to bring a shortcut of that item right into the brain. Now we can bypass that. We can right-click on an attachment and select Move File into Brain or Copy File into Brain. So the choice is really yours whether you want to move the file in, copy the file in, or simply link to the file. Now with Web 2.0, we're going to be using a lot of links. The document itself with Web 2.0 interfaces exists out on the cloud. So we simply need a URL to access that document. And that's what we'll be taking a look at next. So let's go ahead and jump over to research. Let's bring a few URLs in as well. So I've got some sample web pages open here. Bring those onto the right machine. So this is a local coffee shop, but I really like the font, the layout, the style of this website. I want to share this with my design team to see if they can emulate it for my client's project. So I'm simply going to drag and drop from the address bar right here in my browser right into TheBrain. And that creates a link directly back to that particular website. And that's important to remember when we're bringing all of these Web 2.0 items into TheBrain, is that we're going to end up with a lot of links out to the cloud. And let's jump right into that now. We've brought a local document in as a shortcut. I can bring a local document in by clicking on Control-Shift and actually move the file in as well. So let me share that with you. So here back on Lifecycle, I go to a local document that I need for this particular client. I'm going to hold down Control-Shift on my keyboard and drag this 2020 future plan into TheBrain. And notice that it no longer resides here on my desktop. I've actually moved that into TheBrain. So that's a nice little shortcut. But once again, keep in mind you can always right-click to move a file into TheBrain, or on an internal file, I can right-click and select to move a file out of TheBrain. So I go back to simply having a shortcut. The choice is yours. Now, when we're talking, once again, about Web 2.0, that content already exists out on the cloud. You're probably not interested in moving that into your brain. You certainly can download from many of the different applications we'll be looking at today and move that file in. But in most scenarios, what people are most interested in is they've got access to a shared file that maybe they don't even own. They only have access to it on the cloud to read, and they want that link in TheBrain. So we're going to be linking to a lot of content right now. And let's start off with, I've got a little list here. I'm going to start off with Dropbox, for example. Now, the way Dropbox works is that you will have, and I believe I have my Dropbox directory open. There it is. So I have a local version of all of this content, my Dropbox content. And as you can see, they've got this little green check. That means that I'm actually I'm syncing that file or sharing that file in my Dropbox account online. That's all that means from the desktop interface. Now, I can once again, right from the desktop, drag and drop right into TheBrain. That will still work, and it will create a shortcut back to this file. But with Dropbox, since I have an online version of these files as well, notice that I can actually right-click. I'll grab this pricing chart, and I'm going to right-click on the pricing chart from my Dropbox directory, and I get this Copy Dropbox link. So that copies the online link, the URL, onto my clipboard. And over in my brain, I'm going to stay in this lifecycle area. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to paste the web link. So that paste web link then shows up once I have a URL copied onto my clipboard. And of course, the document name, or the thought name rather, is the name of the original document. So there's my pricing chart Excel spreadsheet, and I can click to launch that, and that is going to launch the online version that I have right there in Dropbox. So here's my pricing chart Excel spreadsheet that's opening up online in my Dropbox account. Now, if I'm not logged in yet and I have this particular document just private, in other words, I'm not sharing this document publicly, I'll simply need to log in from the web. I'm already logged in, so that document launched for me. If I wasn't logged in yet, I would be presented with the login screen, and I could log into my account and have access to that file from my brain. It's important to point that out because a little bit later in today's webinar, I'm going to be taking my brain, excuse me, that I'm working on here locally, and I'm actually going to sync my brain to the cloud. So the brain itself is a Web 2.0 application. I can sync my brain to the cloud, making it accessible online, and share these links with other people and other users. And it's important to know or point out that when I share my brain, just because I'm sharing my brain and giving someone reader access to my brain, doesn't necessarily mean they have access to every file within my brain. If I have files in my brain that are pointing to Dropbox, for example, and it's private on Dropbox. As soon as they click a Dropbox link that is private, they'll be prompted to log in. They won't have my login, so my document is therefore protected. So you can bring in publicly shared links or even private links and feel secure that if you do decide to share your brain, none of your private information in these Web 2.0 applications will be shared with other users. So let's take a closer look at Dropbox again. We opened up the local version of Dropbox. Obviously, I can interface and interact with Dropbox from the web. So I'm going to go out to my browser. And I'm skipping ahead to Google Drive. Here is my Dropbox account page. And as you can see, all of the thoughts on my list of available documents here or list of available files in Dropbox have this nice little share icon over to the right. So I can click on that for any particular document. There's the actual URL. Once again, I simply copy and write into TheBrain, right-click, and paste that web link. So it's so easy to get items from Dropbox, the local link if you just want to link to that local file, or the online link, which you can get to from the desktop, from that folder, or right here from the web interface as well. Now we can also, and you'll see now this is a recurring theme, we can grab these URLs from so many different types of Web 2.0 applications. So I'd like to take a look now at Google Drive. Once again, I think I have my Google Drive. There's Google Drive right here on my desktop. I can drag and drop. I can right-click to copy this file and paste it into my brain. But Google Drive is a little bit different. You notice that there's no link to get to this Google Drive by right-clicking on the individual thought from my local set of files and documents. To do Google Drive, I do need to open up the application from my web interface. And there are a few different sort of scenarios, I guess you would say, with all these different applications. Some of them behave just slightly differently. So obviously Dropbox makes it really, really easy. Google Drive, you do need to be from the approach it from the web interface. And now, once again, I can right-click to select Share, and that's where I'll get my URL. And so we'll use this contract. Oh, there you went to Share, get the shareable link. So there's the shareable link. I can simply copy that link. I'm done there. And right-click to paste the web link. Now, notice there it is. The icon obviously picks up Google or picks up Dropbox, so I know which application this is coming from. So I've got that nice visual identification right from the brain. But also, I did want to share with you, let's open up another document. Here is a contract, once again, that I have. I'm going to go ahead and open this. And it's opening a little bit slowly. There it goes. So here it opens in a new window. Sometimes a little preview window opens up and you don't get the new URL. That's what I wanted to share. Let's try this one more time. Let's see if I can do that. It's there we go. So I double-clicked on this and it just brought up basically a preview. Now if you're in this preview mode and you drag and drop, you're actually bringing in a link to your list of available files in your Google Drive account. This is not the unique URL for the individual document. To get that, when I'm in this preview mode, if you're a Google Drive user, you need to pop this out into a separate window. So I'm going to click on Pop Out. There, just like the other document, opened in its own separate window. This is now in its own separate window. They look very similar. The pop-up and the pop-out look very similar. But notice the URL is unique now. I can actually drag and drop this URL. I can copy it or drag and drop it right into TheBrain. And there I've got my Edgar Allan Poe outline.doc saved as a link directly from my brain. So again, some subtle intricacies with the different applications that are out there. Sometimes you're receiving just a URL to a Google Drive item or a Dropbox item, and you can just copy and paste that URL right into TheBrain or launch it. It'll take you directly to a page that looks like this where you can drag and drop the URL into the brain. But if you're logging into your account, once again, just be aware of that preview screen that doesn't have the unique URL. So dragging and dropping this in is going to give you a link back to basically your account page that shows you all of your available files. You need to pop that into a separate window. Or right from the account page, let me close this preview. Right from the account page, I can right-click, and that's where I can get the shareable link to that individual file. And let's do the same really quickly with OneDrive before we move on to Evernote and OneNote, which has a few intricate differences as well. So here we are in OneDrive, and I just want to share with you once again, we right-click. There's that common word, share. Always look for the word to share or shareable URL. Those are the key words that you want to find to get that URL, to get the link into your brain. So once again, if I click on share, it's then going to display this option, get a link. So two-step process. I don't think there was get the link from the right click. There it is. I can simply copy that and once again paste into the brain. So a lot of pasting of items into the brain. And here is something that is unique to OneDrive that I'd like to point out as well. Notice my thought is called Microsoft OneDrive. So it did not pick up the name of the individual file. That's not a problem. You can always go back and modify and change those settings at any time. This was my client questions document. So I simply need to rename this thought client questions. So there I have my client questions, and also it added, just by grabbing the shareable URL, it grabbed a little blurb in the code of that web page, access files anywhere, create documents with free Office Online. So a lot of different websites, when you're dragging and dropping websites, you'll see this quite often. Depending on the metadata that is in the website, the title tag, the different types of coding for a website, you'll get different items appearing there, different sentences or descriptions appearing in what we call the thought label. So I can click on label down below, and in this case, I'll just delete that content. So when I mouse over the thought, I don't see any type of label popping up and appearing. So once again, the brain just picks that up from the coding of the web page. And now let's take a look at a couple of different scenarios in Evernote and OneNote. So there's a few unique items here as well. And Evernote and OneNote are two also very popular Web 2.0 applications that we get a lot of questions about from time to time. So Evernote, I'll start with Evernote and just open up my local version of Evernote. I think it's opening, there it is. And Evernote is nice. It's a linear list of notes, and ideas, thoughts, documents, and things like that that I'm taking. In my scenario, I just simply have a couple of web links and a couple of notes and reminders here. I would like to bring these into the brain as well. So obviously, we can right-click. Here I'm in the desktop application. I can simply right-click and capture the note link. So the wording is just a little bit different. It's not going to say share or URL. Copy note link is what it will say from Evernote. So I copy that note link, and right here in my brain, right-click and paste. And it looks like I've already pasted that one in. I'll paste it in again. And Evernote, once again, is one of the tricky ones that renames the thought. I always see this when I bring an Evernote item here into my brain, this little welcome back. And I'm simply going to rename that really quickly to Cedar Rapids trip. So I really don't mind having to rename my thoughts from time to time, even with Word documents and local documents where it picks up the name of the document. I'll rename those from time to time because sometimes the document it simply needs to be titled proposal. But I'll want a little bit of additional information. customer proposal 2016, 2017 proposal, whatever the case may be. The document might not need to be named that, but I want to see that in the brain on the thought. So I'm renaming my thoughts quite often. You can also click on F2 on your keyboard, or just right-click on any thought and select to rename or edit a thought. So I'm really not troubled by any of the Web 2.0 applications that don't pick up the proper name of the file that I'm bringing into the brain, because I'm typically renaming those anyhow. But just to be aware, when that does happen, depending on which application you're using, whether or not you see the right title, it's a couple of different options, and it's very simple to go back and rename a thought at any time. And quite often, I'm also leaving content down in the notes for that particular item as well. And that's something that I wanted to share with you is not all the time do we need the entire document linked into our brain. Whether you are Evernote or OneNote or Dropbox, if you don't need the entire file, sometimes the entire file could be 17, 20, 100 pages long, but you simply need a bit of content. Notice that I can actually open these documents, and the same is true. I won't go through each one. It's obviously the same for any of these different documents. Once I open up that file, whether it's Google Drive, OneNote, whatever the case may be, I can select text, and I can copy that text. So really quickly, I just need to look up my ticket number so that I have that information available on my phone or from a remote location, and I can right-click down in the notes and paste. And notice that it even retained that framing there for that thought as well. So I have the table all laid out and all of that content right in the notes. So I don't need to launch the actual Evernote item or OneNote item or whatever the case may be. I can simply look at the notes for that content. Again, just another option for you to get the content that you need that's most important into your brain. It's not always the entire document itself. So that is pretty straightforward with Evernote. I'd also like to pull up OneNote. I have a lot of fun with OneNote, and it seems like this always generates a lot of interest and sometimes a lot of questions, because many people that use OneNote don't realize that everything within OneNote actually has its own unique URL. So whether it's the actual tab or the page that you're on, or the notebook that you're in or interested in linking to, or one of the subcategories of that notebook, notice that I can right-click on a paragraph here on the page. So I right-click, and I can copy the link to that specific paragraph. If this particular page, and maybe we can find one really quickly, looking for something with a few different items. Actually, maybe I don't have one. But quite often they'll have graphics, multiple paragraphs, whatever the case may be, for that particular page. Each item on that page has its own unique URL. So there I copied a link to a paragraph. Once again, I can go back into the brain, right-click, and just, I grabbed the wrong thing there. Right-click and copy the link to paragraph, and here in the brain, paste web link. So notice I can click, and it's actually going to take me directly to that page and to that specific paragraph. Now let's say I want to go bigger. I don't need just this paragraph. I need the whole notebook. I can right-click on a notebook, so copy link to notebook, or a subcategory. Right-click and copy link to section. So all of these different sections within OneNote, which still seems to be a very, very popular application, all of them have individual URLs that can be pasted right into the brain for easy access. And also, this information that I'm copying onto my clipboard doesn't even need to be pasted in the brain as an individual thought. I can also right-click and paste down below. So notice that it gives me a little sentence, and I can control-click in the notes to go directly to that item as well. So in that case, it copied just the text that was highlighted and took me directly to that highlighted text in OneNote. So a lot of unique URLs are happening behind the scenes within OneNote, and there's a lot of different ways to bring that content there into the brain. So now that we've brought in content from, I think I've covered all of the different 2.0 apps, and now I'd like to talk about the most important 2.0. We're halfway through our call, and the most important 2.0 app, and that is TheBrain. So we've brought in content from our local desktop, from the web, from Dropbox, Google Drive, Evernote, OneDrive, and OneNote. So all of that content coming together in TheBrain. I'm now going to take this particular brain. So I've got all of my Lifecycle documents. I've got a couple of, or just a web research document at this point. But it's time to start sharing this brain with my team. And different members of my team need to get to different areas of this brain that I've created. So I've got many, many different options for sharing my brain. And the easiest of which is to get this brain online where I can treat it just as all of these other apps have behaved so far. I can send URLs and shared links to other members to access my brain online. I can give them both either, I should say, read-only access, or I can give them editor access as well. So the first thing I'm going to do from my brain is to simply click on the synchronization button. So I'm already logged into TheBrain. You'll be logged into TheBrain once you download TheBrain, create an account. You can log in and sync this brain to the cloud. So right now, this brain is being uploaded to the cloud. And let's go ahead and take a look at this brain online. So here is my eSolutions brain online. So here I am in that reach out area of the brain that we looked at earlier. So all of my documents that I've put into my brain on my local version are now accessible from the web. And let's roll back just a little bit and talk about those different options that I discussed when bringing files into the brain. If you're bringing a shortcut into the brain, so just a link to a local file on your desktop, all you will see from the cloud is a shortcut back to that location. The actual file won't be there, won't be included in the sync. Only internal attachments are synced to the cloud. So anything that you brought internally from your desktop and you actually moved or copied that file into the brain, those files will be accessible to you online. If you simply just linked to a local file on your desktop, and I believe I did that if I go to the world and down into Lifecycle. So here's the 2 new thoughts, and here's all of the content that I brought in today. One of them, maybe I did move this file into the brain. Let's find out. No, I did not. So here is that PDF that I brought in earlier in today's demo, and this was simply brought in as a link. So it was linking to my C drive, and there I can see the full path down below. So if I try to access this particular link from my iPad, my iPhone, an Android device, a friend's computer, or if I sync it to another machine, most likely this path isn't there. C, users, Matt Caton, desktop, et cetera, et cetera. That file is not going to be there, so I won't have access to this particular PDF. So that's just something to keep in mind if you are interested in syncing your brain to the cloud for online access, for mobile device access, then your attachments should be moved internally into your brain. Now, all of the Web 2.0 attachments that we linked to today, they're out there online. So I'm online, I should have access. And I will. I can go ahead and launch any of these attachments, such as my client questions. I'll double click, and that's going to take me directly to, in this case, OneDrive, and launch that particular file. So I'll now have instant access to all of this content right from my brain. So rather than keeping track of all these different URLs that have been coming into me from customer emails or that I've copied from other locations, maybe where my sales department is sharing a Google Drive or a Dropbox account. Suddenly I've got access to all the specific files that I need access to, both from my local version of the brain or from my online version of the brain as well. So I can launch any of these attachments to get directly back to this content. So this gives me access Let's talk about that for just a moment. Then I'm going to talk about giving Patrick access. I need him to make some modifications to this particular brain or make sure that he has the client questions available and the presentations available because he is going to be on site with my client giving this presentation. So first, obviously you can see I now have web access, and here I've got the two side by side. This is a really nice view. If I go down into my Lifecycle Documents, here's my local desktop version, and right from the web interface, I have access to all of these different information sources as well. I can even continue on adding new content. So I can create new thoughts. Let's say I want my 2017 sales review. So I'll create a new thought right here from the web interface. And if I have a URL from, once again, Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever the case may be, I can click on Edit. Oh, let's go to the right thought. Let me hit Cancel there, and I'll go to my Sales Review, click on Edit, and here is where I can add an attachment. So I can upload an individual file from the machine that I happen to be working on, or add a link and paste that right there into Access that file. Let's go ahead and do that. If I go to, I'll just pick on Google Drive once again, and here's my materials research. I'll right-click, and I'll get the shareable link to that file. There it is. I'll copy that onto my clipboard, and here in the web interface of TheBrain, I'll paste that right in and attach that content. Save that. So right from my 2017 sales review, I now have that materials research, which is a document I store out on Google Drive, accessible from that thought. It's not in my desktop version yet, but as soon as I sync my desktop version, I'm going to upload any local changes to the cloud, download any cloud changes to local. So the two being kept perfectly in sync. So not only can I modify content right from the cloud and access it, I can also get to that content from my iPhone as well. So I'm going to log in, and here I've already logged in. I'm showing now that I've got, in this case, my iPhone, and I'll go to Clients. It's hard to look at this top Clients and show you the nice smooth animation on the iOS app as well. But I'll click now really quickly, Time Warner, and into my The World ad campaign. So here I'm already there, Lifecycle. And once again, access to all of those disparate information data sources from the cloud, right there from my mobile devices. So we have an iOS application that is available for download, as well as an Android application that you can download as well. So mobile device users can access their brains from their devices. And then here is the final component that I really wanted to share with you as well, bringing this full circle. We've talked about all of these other user-based web applications, so Web 2.0 applications, the best of which I think is TheBrain. So TheBrain, it falls into that category as well, with the simple capability of not only getting user-edited content onto the cloud for access, easy access from multiple locations, but also for sharing. So I can now share the brain and the content that I've created in this brain with other users. So let's focus now on the online version. I'm back in my web browser, as you can see, and I'm going to just jump back into my personal account page. So these are all of the individual brains that I've synced. I sync brains constantly on many, many different topics. So I've got a lot of different types of brains available online. Here is my eSolutions brain. I can click on that thumbnail to launch that brain. But in this case, I'm going to jump into the settings for this particular brain. Now, when you sync a brain to the cloud, by default, it is marked as private. So this is how it would look, private, and there would be no other user roles. Only I myself have access by logging into my account to this particular brain. And syncing your brain to the cloud is RSA encrypted. The upload, the storage, the download is all secure and will remain private. Even administrators to webbrain.com, such as myself, cannot see data or access any thought names or data within a brain that is marked as private. So it is completely secure in your account. But I can take this one step further, and I can share my brain with other users. In other words, I can leave it private, and I can share my brain by typing in an email address of another person that has a brain account. If they don't have a brain account, they'll receive an email from the server inviting them to create an account so that they can log in and see the brains that I've created. So in other words, I'm keeping this private, but I'm giving access, reader access, to other brain users. You have to have a brain account in this scenario to actually see this particular brain. But let's say they don't have a brain account. So I do know that Patrick has a brain account, so I've made him an editor. We'll talk about editor access in just a moment. But I can type in another person that does not have a brain account. If the brain cannot find their email address in our database, then again, they'll be sent an email being invited to create a brain account and see this private brain. They have to be logged in. So that still keeps it very, very secure. But to go a little bit beyond that, let's say I'm sharing this brain with a couple of clients. I don't want to hassle them with having to create an account, which is very easy to do, but I simply want to give them access to my brain. Or I want to share my brain on my blog or on my website. I want to embed it so that other people can see it. That's an option as well. In this case, I can make it either public or unlisted. When it's public, it'll actually show up on webbrain.com/explore. That's where public brains can appear, and people create brains on all different types of topics, whether they're recreational, political, or career-based, whatever the case may be. They've created a brain on a specific topic they want to share with the world, and it's accessible publicly at webbrain.com/explore. So you can browse through their brain online. In this case, I'll leave it unlisted. It won't show up on the Explore page, but anyone that has the URL can access this brain online. So I'll leave this unlisted and say save. I'm not going to type in another email address because I'm actually going to tweet out the URL for this brain. So let's go ahead and open it up once again. Now, this particular brain, once again, it's marked as unlisted, so anyone can access it if they know the URL. To get to the URL, rather than copying this long URL that's in the address bar, I'm actually going to right-click on the background to show you some more options. First, I can copy just a specific URL to this link. So all those other times that we grabbed a link to a particular file that we wanted to share with another colleague, this is how you do this from the brain. So I want to get them access not only to the brain, so I don't want to send them to the brain that says, great, you're in my brain. Now click here, 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 and navigate them through the brain to get to a particular topic. Now they could use the built-in search, but this is much easier. I want to send them directly to this 2017 sales review document. That's the URL that will take them directly there. I do have the option of sending them directly to this brain, so they'll start on the home thought, the very first thought that was created in this brain. That's where they'll start, and then they can navigate throughout the brain from there. So the URL for the entire brain from the home thought, or just directly pinpointed into a specific thought in the brain, that choice is yours. And then finally down below is that iframe that I briefly mentioned earlier. If you've ever created or embedded, I should say, a YouTube video in your blog or in your website, this is the same principle. I can actually take my brain, copy this iframe code, and I can even customize this with some of our built-in settings down below. If you know a little bit about HTML coding, you can actually modify this on your own to make the window 825 pixels wide by 734 pixels tall to really fit your page that you're designing. You can customize this and embed this right into your brain, embed this right into your website or to your blog. The great thing about that is when I go back to my desktop version and I make a bunch of changes and click on sync, those syncs are uploaded to the cloud, and this embedding code is just grabbing the brain, visualizing the brain as it appears in webbrain.com. So I don't have to go back to my blog to update the brain about car care, or whatever my hobbies or interests are. It's uploaded automatically. Anyone that goes to that website will see the most up-to-date version of TheBrain that I'm creating right here from my desktop, and just simply syncing to the cloud to keep it up-to-date and refreshed. So many, many different options you have there for taking TheBrain that we started off with just simply a local version of TheBrain that I've created. I gave myself links to, once again, OneNote, Dropbox, Evernote, all these disparate online data sources I have access to. I've put access and put that in context here into TheBrain that I'm building, so links to the specific files that I'm interested in. I've actually synced that to the cloud, and now from the cloud I've got that access to send links to individual files or the entire brain out into the world. And then to take that one step further, I can also upgrade my Brain account to TeamBrain. And TeamBrain allows me to give other Brain users that also use TeamBrain editor access to my Brain. So if I go back online to my settings page, you'll notice that this particular I've also given Brigitte, Shelley, and Patrick editor access to this Brain. So when they log into their account, they'll see not only the Brains that they've synced, but also the other Brains that they've been given access to. They can download a local version or interact with it online from the web interface and add their own content, make their own changes, and back in the Brain, once they sync, those changes are synced up to the cloud, and I'll have them sync down to me once I perform my sync as well. So suddenly, it's not just me syncing and updating this information. I'm sharing and collaborating and syncing all that information to the cloud as well. The Brain also, and I don't think Patrick and Brigitte have made a lot of edits in this Brain, but I'll see if I can jump really quickly into another Brain. So I'll jump into, no, I don't have access to it here, so I'll just say Open Brain. And I've got another Brain that we have been, several that we've been collaborating on, but one that I can demo, and that's called JT Apparel. So let me just type in JT. There it is. So this particular Brain is a Brain that we collaborate in from time to time. Another great sample of a business example of the Brain. But this is what I wanted to share with you. If I come down here into the reports and just refresh, and I'll turn on the modification detail display. So this allows me to see not only when thoughts were modified, but also by whom. So Shelley, Tracy, there's Patrick, and Brigitte, I believe, will show it up in here as well. She might not have access to this Brain, but notice as I scroll through, I can see who edited which thought and when. So there's accountability for any individual thoughts when you're collaborating through TeamBrain as well. So that's the final component that I wanted to share with you. I've brought in not only other 2.0 web applications, but also shown how the Brain can be used as one as well. And so with this, Patrick, I'm actually going to send it back to you. I haven't had a chance. I see a lot of questions have been coming in, but I haven't had a chance during the demo to be reading them, so I'll throw it over to Patrick to see if we have any questions of further features that someone would like to see demonstrated.
Sure. I don't remember who it was that asked, but if you could show the differences between the Brain on Windows and the Brain on Mac, or just explain the minor differences there.
Absolutely. The differences are very minor. I think that's a good key word, Patrick. Some very minor differences between the Brain on Windows and the Brain on PC. The first thing that comes to mind, well, first off, unfortunately, I can't show the two side by side. I'm either demoing on PC, which I am today, or demoing on my Mac. So I'm on PC today. All the features I shared with you were PC-based. One feature that I can think of that always comes up is there's a shortcut for copying a file into the Brain. So let me go back to my local eSolutions directory, and I'm going to jump into my eSolutions Brain. And here's this funding Excel spreadsheet that I want to copy into the Brain. I want to leave the existing one there, and I don't want to move it into the Brain or link it into the Brain. I want to copy it into the Brain. So I'm going to hold down the Control key. On a Mac, you would hold down the Alt key. So it's very subtle, but it's just a simple keystroke. I am clicking on Control on my keyboard. If you're on a Mac, you would do this with Alt. I click and do a nice little drag and drop. The original funding Excel spreadsheet stays there. The new copy, as you can see, it's internal in my brain, internally attached because I've copied it in. I've got a new copy of that brain. It's internal in my brain as well. And it's just a simple keystroke, Control, drag and drop versus Alt, drag and drop. There's another keystroke difference if I am adding thoughts to a selection box. A more advanced feature of the brain, but I Control click on a gate and I add all connected thoughts to that gate into the selection box where I can apply mass changes. I can en masse delete or forget these thoughts. I can change their privacy to private or public when I'm syncing to the cloud, or assign them all a thought type and tag, a feature that we didn't get a chance to talk about today. But doing changes en masse to thoughts to get them into the selection box on a PC, Control click, on a Mac, that is a command click. So a subtle difference there. And finally, the only other thing that really comes to mind is the brain allows us to auto-hide windows. So I can dock this particular brain, I'll auto-hide it on the right. And notice when I click away, it, like a window shade, just kind of scrolls to the right, and I've got a little icon down there in the corner to activate. I can drag and drop and hover over this to activate the brain and drop a file in, or click on that little icon and it pops out. Because of just the way a Mac works, that is not a possibility, those different window settings. And I guess the last component, I can't really share this, when you're doing a search on a Mac, you get a third option of settings. If I do a search in this particular brain, I'll search the word power and click on search. My search results will show all the thought matches, then all the content matches, whether it's a shortcut or an internal file or a link to a web page or URL. That's all the content matches. Mac users will see a third setting of wherever that search result shows up in their contacts or email or their calendar. So, and from there, they'll have a couple of buttons to preview or to add that search result into the brain. So those are the only features that I can think of that are major differences. But also, if you read through our manual online, we always are sure to specify if we're talking about a Mac-only feature or a PC-only feature. And we're also doing our best in the next generation of the Brain software to eliminate any changes. So it'll really be pretty much the same whether you're Windows or on a Mac, with some subtle differences because PC people like clicking on the Control button and Mac people like clicking on the Command button. So some subtle differences like that, but the application will be virtually identical in both environments. And it is cross-compatible too. Let me throw that in. I'm working on a PC. Patrick works on a Mac. I can zip this brain up and send him a copy, and he can open it up on his Mac and continue using the application. So it is cross-platform compatible. Patrick?
Great. So yes, I know you covered briefly sharing brains and having someone else edit them, but Bilal wants to know how you would package a brain for someone to use who doesn't have the brain. Okay.
So if they don't have the brain, obviously you can introduce them to the brain. Send them to www.thebrain.com, have them download the 30-day free trial. With that free trial, even if the trial has expired and they're using the free version of the brain and you want them to see your existing brain, you can click on File and select Create Brain Zip. It zips the entire brain database into a single file that can be archived or emailed, or you can put it up on a large file sharing service such as hightail.com, and they can download it and open it in their free version of the brain. They won't be able to modify or make any changes to that content, but they can at least see your brain in their brain application, which is absolutely free. So that's one option you have. But there's also the option of, once again, syncing your brain to the brain cloud. So this particular brain I've synced up today. And let me jump back over to the cloud. Here's the brain, the settings page. for this brain. I've made this unlisted. I can then send them the URL to this brain. They do not have to have the brain even installed. They could never have even heard of the brain application, but you send them this URL. So let me save these changes, and I'll jump into the interface where I can copy that abbreviated URL. So once again, I open the brain online, I right-click and select Share, and this is where I can gather that nice, short, abbreviated URL. It's truncated so that it's easy to tweet or send it in an email. It's not this long, exaggerated URL like you see up in the address bar at the top of my screen. I can send them the link directly to start this brain off. There's the link they need. Once again, don't have to have the brain installed. As long as this brain is online and marked at least as unlisted or public, they'll be able to access that URL.
Great. And Mike wanted to know if you could go over embedding brain links in other apps like OneNote. How would you link to a thought in OneNote?
Oh, that's a great question. Absolutely. So obviously this is one of them. If you just want to get to a link in a document that you're sending, let's say you're sending a document about your research to your professor, to your colleagues, and you want to get them to a specific point in your brain. If that brain is online, you can use, once again, that URL. So I can right-click on a thought, or not on a thought, rather, just on the background, share, and here's the URL to that specific thought online. It is publicly accessible or at least unlisted, so this URL would work in any document. That, once again, the easiest way to share. If you're just working locally and you want to get to your local thought in your application. Now, once again, this isn't going to work if you embed this in a document and then email that document off to your colleague in Tallahassee that doesn't use the brain and certainly doesn't have access to your local brain. This next link I'm going to share with you wouldn't work. This one would online, but if you want in a local application to link to a local thought in a local brain, that can be done as well. So, oh, I closed the brain. Sorry about that. Let me launch the brain once again. Oh, no, I marked it as, let me turn that feature off. Back to window, and I'm floating my brain. There it is. So let's say I want to get directly to this thought and embed this link in another application. I can right-click on an individual thought, and I can select to, let me scroll down, copy local thought URL. There it is. I lost it sort of in the drop-down. Copy local thought URL. So I can copy that local thought URL, and now I can, well, I'll just open Word, for example. If I have Word, there it is. So here is Word. If I just paste in Word, and you'll see exactly what a brain's local URL actually looks like. And so I think with that, we've covered everything. Once again, we're also available on our website, the chat system, as well as all of the online resources. So the discussion boards and the all of the resources in our support area of our website at www.thebrain.com. So thank you everyone so much for joining us today. This was a very exciting webinar to be able to present all of these different disparate information sources from the cloud and bring those into the brain. We so rarely have the opportunity to show individually all of these different applications. So this was really fun for me to be able to share all of them in one webinar with you. And once again, we'd always love to hear from you at support@thebrain.com if you have further questions. Thanks so much for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your week. And as always, enjoy your brain. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.